Hello, welcome back, another live stream. Today I'm going to talk about traps, disabling, whatever you want to say, basically dealing with a trap. And there's been at least 2 videos I've done so far leading up to this point, and today we are going to deal with the disarming side of things, or the disabling side of things. Now, my suggestion to you is that I've got a fair amount of information. This is a player guide, but there will be Dungeon Master stuff. I would grab some food, some drink, get comfortable. There's a lot to be said today. I'm going to run a poll for those of you who are interested in taking part. You're welcome to take part in that. And of course, I will do Q&A or questions and answers at the end. Feedback, that's always going to be a part of my channel. And so let's get on with the show. I will apologise. I'm trying to keep myself well. Hopefully my voice will hold out. Anyway, let's move on to the main event. Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, because I usually do, but today we're looking at a specific part of Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to talk about thieves' tools, disarming, disabling. That's right, this is Disabling Traps in Dungeons and Dragons, a player's guide. A lot of this will be referring back to Dungeons and Dragons 5e, for those of you who are playing that version of the game. But a lot of it does, in fact, apply to other versions of Dungeons & Dragons or other roleplay games. So you can sort of consider this agnostic to a certain degree. Not completely, but to a certain degree, which I'm sure you will find useful when you're running your games. So let's have a look at some of the things that you need to consider. You've found a trap. You know how that trap works now. And it's time to deal with that trap. Disabling a trap can include a few different actions. You can disarm the trap, you can avoid the trap, you can trigger the trap, you can jam up the trap, you can destroy the trap, and you can dispel a magical trap. But there's also another possibility, and that is you'll find that some traps can't be disarmed. I'm going to go through step by step the different things that you can consider pretty standard for Dungeons & Dragons 5e, but also to a large extent other versions of Dungeons & Dragons, and give you some tips and hints, particularly for players, but also there is some advice here for Dungeon Masters. First off, I would expect a dexterity check using a set of thieves' tools to sabotage or disable a trap. It's not always the case, but I would expect that there's going to probably be a dexterity check involving thieves' tools to sabotage any trap. So a sleight of hand check can actually be used by a Dungeon Master. Sorry, people. It's been a long week, and I'm going to start again. I don't know why I'm going to start. Why am I starting again? I'm starting again because... God blimey, have I let the week get to me? Yeah, probably. All right, well, I'll start again. I'm sorry. Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons. We're going to talk about thieves' tools, disarming traps, disabling traps. That is the topic for today. So, yes, this is the disabling traps in Dungeons & Dragons for player characters. And it's going to be mostly system agnostic, not completely, but lots of elements of this will apply to any version of the game, not just Dungeons & Dragons 5e. So when it comes to disabling traps, the basics is like you found your trap, you know how it works, it's time to deal with it, and then you need to actually disable that trap, and that can include a few different actions. You can disarm the trap, avoid the trap, trigger the trap. Okay, you can jam up the trap, you can destroy the trap, and you can dispel magical traps. Some traps can't be disarmed, so you have to look at alternatives. Expect a dexterity check using a set of thieves' tools to disable or sabotage a trap. That's not always the case, but usually expect something like that. A sleight of hand check can be used or called upon by a Dungeon Master when disarming a trap potentially. It's not necessarily going to be the case, but if you have sleight of hand and you're proficient, a Dungeon Master could use that if they wanted to, if they're playing D&D 5e. Do you need thieves' tools to actually disable a trap? It's a good question. It actually depends on the nature of the trap. Some traps would require thieves' tools, and some traps will not work. You cannot disable them with thieves' tools. And in fact, some traps don't actually need to be disarmed or disabled with a tool of any kind. There's just a way of doing it. So what would be a good example of a trap? Even though usually we find ourselves using thieves' tools to disable traps, a hunting trap is actually designed to be disarmed without tools. You don't use thieves' tools, you don't use any tool. You simply place your foot, there's a side mechanism, and you place your foot on it, and you step down, and it opens up. That's basically how it works. What about proficiency with thieves' tools? Well, the good thing about having proficiency with thieves' tools is it allows you to actually add your proficiency bonus to an ability check to disable a trap. So it's not a useless thing to have. Do you need proficiency with thieves' tools to use it for disabling a trap? So are you required? Can you have a set of thieves' tools but not be proficient to use it? Do you need to have that proficiency in thieves' tools to disable a trap? Well, that's really pretty much up to the dungeon master to decide. Like if your dungeon master says, no, you don't need it, and if your dungeon master says, yes, you do need it, then that's how it kind of works. There's nothing really spelled out in the rules that stipulate exactly how that's supposed to operate. The designers sort of did give you the impression when you read through what they've got there that anybody can try anything. But if you aren't proficient in thieves' tools, when you make that disabling trap check, you don't get to add your proficiency bonus to the dice roll. That's the big difference if you decide to allow people to do this. If the Dungeon Master already allows a player character to use a skill that they are proficient with disabling a trap, and they also have proficiency in thieves' tools, that character can be granted advantage. Or you could also allow them to have automatic success, because not only are they highly skilled in the area, that's the skill that you have decided to use, but they are also highly skilled with using thieves' tools. They are proficient. Okay, but again, this is a Dungeon Master discretion concept. It's a ruling that, or guideline, should I say, that comes out of Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and it's not actually in the main core books. So if you were wondering, what am I talking about, it's because it's in a different book. Generally, Dungeon Masters will set a high DC for disabling a trap, much higher than Wizards of the Coast's pre-made adventures. Why? Because disabling traps is usually considered by a Dungeon Master to be a risky endeavor. It's a risky task. So therefore, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be very easy, and it's probably not going to be moderately difficult. So you may find yourself with quite high DCs for disabling traps. Something to bear in mind. But Wizards of the Coast actually allows for a 50% or greater success rate when any kind of character, and it doesn't matter what level you are, when disabling traps. So you'll find the DCs that Wizards of the Coast will set are DC 10, DC 15, and that's pretty much about it. Whereas if you're dealing with your own home group and a Dungeon Master that doesn't operate like this, then you'll probably find that most Dungeon Masters not following pre-made adventures are setting higher DCs than this. Dispel magic, counterspell, and shield will generally deal with most magical traps unless the character is deemed by the Dungeon Master to be unaware of the magical effect. And as a result, you can't use your reaction spell to stop it. Now, dispel magic is not a reaction spell, but you can ready it and cast it. But the other problem is too, it's not so much about the fact that you have a reaction spell or you have a ready to action to put into place. When I say unaware, what I mean is you can't see, hear, or notice it in some way. And if you're not aware that it's going to take place, then of course you wouldn't be able to use your reaction to do so. Okay. The shield spell will only be effective against spells and projectiles that have an attack. It's anything that has an attack roll against the character's armor class or the monster's armor class. That's the only time that the shield spell would be effective. But a lot of people fail to realize that there are occasions where it might actually come up where the the trap that's triggered has an attack roll rather than including some sort of saving throw, and so therefore your shield would be quite useful. And you never know, your Dungeon Master may give you a benefit by having the shield spell up. The arcane trickster can use mage hand with thieves tools to disable a trap from a distance, which is actually awesome. You can't normally do this. You can't use in conjunction mage hand and thieves tools without being an arcane trickster currently in the game of Dungeons & Dragons 5e. So if you want to do that, you've got to have that. If you can't reach the trap trigger and there is a dart hole or dart holes involved, either in the floor, the walls, or whatever, you could try jamming up those holes with something like wax, stones, cloth, or bark. And that's to stop the projectile from firing out if you can't get at the trap trigger itself. Now, of course, if you can't get to the holes without triggering it because the trap trigger's in the way, it's probably not going to work either. But you may be able to put something up against those holes to stop the things that are in there, the poison darts, from flying out. Jam a pressure plate for a trap with a piton. That's the little piece of metal that slides into a crack in a rock, and you bang it in with a hammer when you're climbing, the piton, or an iron spike. These are things that are designed specifically for jamming things up, and this is sometime a time where you might want to use it to actually jam a pressure plate, bearing in mind that it could also go off when you try to put it into place. If disarming a trap is too risky, try avoiding the trap and going around it in some way. So you can go around a trap, you can go over a trap, you can go under a trap potentially, you can teleport past a trap. Sometimes the best way to deal with a trap is just to have nothing to do with it and just avoid it completely. Spells are actually pretty good at getting a character past a trap, like Misty Step. It doesn't have a long range, but it's still pretty effective. You have Dimension Door, you have Teleport, you have the Fly spell. Pass Wall might be very useful in this situation. Gaseous Form and Stone Shape, particularly if you need to make like an extra door to get through a place where you know you don't want to go. And then of course we have Spider Climb. Spider Climb can be used to avoid traps that have a tripwire, a pressure plate that are either situated on the floor or the walls, and what you do is you simply climb along the ceiling to the other side to avoid all of that stuff. Only deliberately trigger a trap from a distance if it blocks your way forward. If you could take a different route, and then that's probably better to do that. If you find yourself in a situation where you are having to trip a trap, only do so if the route that you're taking forward is absolutely necessary. It's probably not wise as a dungeon master to stick a trap in the way that stops complete forward movement without providing an alternative. And also too, you usually don't want to try and deliberately trigger a trap unless you have tried alternative options. Otherwise, it's honestly better to leave it alone. Some traps will reset when triggered, so check it's no longer active before proceeding. When you do actually trigger that trap, make sure it doesn't reset on you. Dispelling the magical effect may not be permanent if the dungeon master has put the magical trap on a reset timer. Sometimes these magical traps, even though you think you've got rid of the effect, it's not gone, it's still there. The spell Knock can be used at range of about 60 feet to unlock any kind of potentially trapped doors or treasure chests. It doesn't mean it opens it though, so you still need to have a way of opening it, but it will unlock it and therefore make it easier for you to find an alternative way to open it. Maybe use your 10-foot pole to lift up the lid, maybe you stick a grappling hook on it, maybe you simply just use Mage Hand after it's been unlocked. The 10-foot pole can be used to trigger traps. It's not just for finding traps, but you can actually trigger a trap with a 10-foot pole if the range of the trap is known and it's very short. If it's not short, it may not be a very good idea. What about summoning a creature or a familiar and you use them to trigger that trap? You sacrifice your summoned creature or familiar so that you can get past the hazard. The Animate Dead spell can be employed to create skeletons and zombies, and they can activate the trap for you so that your characters can get past safely. The Shatter and Firebolt spell can be used to destroy objects but also structures. So that means you could potentially destroy the object or structure of a trap rather than doing something else. Weapons can also be used to destroy a trap if you can stand close enough to it without it activating on you or killing you. Okay? So not the best technique, but it can be used. Use the following spells to trigger a trap. These are probably some of the best techniques for triggering a trap at a distance, and that is Unseen Servant. It's an easy spell to get. Something like Telekinesis, the Animate spell, Object spell, and then of course Big B's Hand. All of these are pretty effective at actually triggering a trap so that you don't wind up triggering it with your player character and then dying or taking a whole lot of hit point damage. So the intention with this was to give you a great huge list of different things that would work in your game and be efficient and effective. And I'm hoping that you found this useful. Please let me know in the comments section what was useful to you and what wasn't. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Okay, all right. I'm going to have a drink of water before I proceed into the chat. And I apologize for my start. I've been forgetting a lot of stuff. It's been a busy week. If you have not noticed, I have been doing a lot recently, probably way too much. And so it's very easy for me to forget things. What I will try to do in the future, I mean, even though the live streams are in 4K, they're good quality, and the slides for today are pretty good. I will also try to do an edited version of this thing and release that. That will be in 4K as well. That's the intention. I don't know how fast it will happen, but I'll do my best. Anyway, let's go through the Q&A and say hi to everybody. I just wanted to say to everybody that I just want to thank my patrons. If you want to support the channel and me doing this sort of thing, the best way, even though I know this is not a tutorial as such, this is not my tutorial day, this is my normal live stream day, the best way to support me is on Patreon. You can pay as little as $1 a month and you get absolutely everything, and you get a lot. And otherwise, super chats and super stickers, so that I keep doing this sort of thing. And now let's have a look at the poll here. We've got 10 people in here. I knew that potentially I would not get a high turnout for this particular video, but I actually think this is an important topic to discuss. I've talked about this topic with Wally DM before. We've got 3 videos. You'll find them in the description of this video if you want to go and watch them later, where we talk about investigating traps, evaluating traps, and disabling or disarming traps. And you'll find a lot of the material I talked about today is actually in this. Okay. All right. Have you lost a character to a trap? 30% yes, 50% no. I only DM 20%. Okay. Good to know. Good to know. We'll leave that going. How's it going, Mike Hall? No, Mike. This is not about how to get a chatty player to shut their trap or their mouth. That was not the intention at all. How's it going, Spirit Wolf? Oh, there is... No, we don't have a live Dungeon Master Roundtable today. We have a Dungeon Master Roundtable, but it's not live. Okay, right. Okay, I'll now remember. Also, too, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to mention it really quickly. I want to go through here. Now, I'm going to say hi to everybody before I mention anything, okay? So, how's it going, Spirit Wolf? Thank you for coming back. And we've got Pale Rider. Grimtooth's Traps, yeah. Love those books. Yes, so I believe Wally DM did a sort of like a review of the different types of trap books out there, and he ranked them. There's a video on his channel that talks about that. It's actually pretty good. Wally really does know his stuff, and he doesn't... when he says something isn't very good, he says it's not very good. Okay. Hello, how's it going, Scott? Right. So a lot of people know each other here, I'm aware. So, it's just, I mean, my weekend is going to be busy, but not as busy as my week has been. Yeah. Um, it's just trying to keep up with everything. I still need to upgrade a lot of the slides for the classes, and I will, so that the quality is even better than it has been. Not visually, not just the material. But yeah, it's been a bit tricky to keep it all together. um, yeah. So here's the thing. This is what. Look, let's get real. When it comes to traps, as a dungeon master, you're going to really do it however you want. And so, what I wanted to do with this was to highlight for players that they need to consider some certain aspects of the game dependent on their dungeon master. It's not as if everything is set out in concrete by Wizards of the Coast, and also Wizards of the Coast tends to set very easy DCs. It's kind of ridiculous that disabling a trap is a 10 or a 15. The only time I feel like a 10 or a 15 would make sense is if you are proficient in thieves tools, because then assumably, I mean, you would assume that you'd be quite capable and competent in doing it, so it would make a little bit more sense. And that's probably maybe where they're going with, like, if you have thieves tools, then you're probably going to be pretty good at disabling traps and it's not going to go off on you. But the problem is, a trap is only fun and interesting if it does something. If it never goes off, it's not fun. And I'm not saying death, save and die traps are fun. People already know my view on traps. If you've been on the channel a lot, you know that I view traps as something that should reduce your resources over time, not all at once. And I like skill challenges as a trap rather than what I see out right now. Yes, so I have. So my call, I've actually come across this. I've had players who wound up finding a set of thieves tools. They weren't proficient, but they decided to keep them just in case. And it did come up. They did ask me, like, can I use these thieves tools to try to disable this trap? Because we've come across a trap, we know it's there, but nobody else has got thieves tools and nobody's proficient in thieves tools, so can I give it a go? And so it's up to you as a dungeon master whether you allow that or not. Of course, you won't be allowing them to put their proficiency bonus onto the check, but yeah, again, your decision to make as a dungeon master. And I would be wise, if you are a player, if there are players here, please ask your dungeon master how they roll these sorts of things. Okay? Marina, hello, how are you? Ninja Squirrel, can I just say, Ninja Squirrel, I love the name and I feel like I need to make a meme out of your name. Recently I made a meme with a squirrel, and I now feel like I need a 4K image of a ninja squirrel. So if anybody ever finds a 4K image of a ninja squirrel, please stick it into the live chat now so that I can go back and appropriate that for later. Hello, how are you doing, Ninja? Okay, Helping Hand 23, hello, how are you? I hope this was useful to you. You glad I'm here? Good. Get Fred a drink, someone. I can't drink alcohol anymore, unfortunately. I don't know if there's anybody here who paints miniatures. So what I'm going to do is, I actually have a brother. My brother David was on my channel painting miniatures live not so long ago. And he has been trying to get 50 subscribers. If he gets 50 subscribers, he can paint live his miniatures. And he can do that pretty much like quite a lot, because he does a lot of painting, and he would be quite happy just to turn his camera on if he could. But he can't do that on YouTube until he has 50 subscribers. I wonder if I can find him. Mini FX is his channel name. I might just drop that into the chat today. And you guys who are into miniatures, there might be somebody here, can go and check him out. Here we go. There's the link to his channel. And he does D&D stuff, he does Warhammer stuff, he does cars, all that sort of thing. So I'm just going to drop his link in here and say, go check out my brother, okay? Once he gets to 50 subscribers, he can go live, which would be like awesome for him. And I encourage you. I do plan to bring David back onto the channel to paint miniatures in the future. Hello, Peter. You always enjoy my content. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's good. Your first character that died by a trap. I remember dying by many traps, but yeah, way back in the Isle of Dread. Cheers. Nah, look. Do you know, Peter? I'm thinking of probably the worst time I ever encountered a trap, and it's kind of weird because it was a combination of a creature and a piece of furniture. For whatever reason, I was investigating, because I was playing a rogue. I was investigating a couch. I was searching through a couch, and the trap was actually ticks. A swarm of ticks killed me as I was trying to examine the couch for hidden compartments or something like that. And I died before I had a chance to do anything. I have to say, those are the types of traps that kind of suck. And I remember my dungeon master coming back and saying, geez, Fred, I've killed your character so many times. And I'm like, yeah, I noticed that. My average time standing is during a battle is between 1.5 rounds. So either I last halfway through the round or I last one round. And if I get to 1.5 rounds, I'd be lucky. And so, yes, I have to say that playing the rogue, particularly in 3.5 and older versions of the game, is pretty rough. It's pretty rough. Okay, what do you got here, Marina? So that's a good question, Marina. I think the thing to remember is you need to give players some description, but it's also part and parcel of playing the game to answer questions, right? And that means to answer a question as a dungeon master, somebody has to ask a question. Like that's actually a really big element of dealing with any kind of exploration, and including traps. So let's answer your question, since you've put it forward, and I'll kind of be a bit more formal about what I say. I mean, I guess the question is, I guess as a dungeon master, when you're trying to present a trap, what are you going to do? How much information do you give? I've always been of the opinion that you give them the most obvious information that is there at first glance. And then once you've done that, because the players don't know necessarily that there's a trap there, now there might be a perception check involved, or maybe an investigation check, whatever you decide is appropriate. But in any case, it's up to a player to ask questions. And even when I give a description of something and I ask the players what they want to do, often if I don't get any response, I always, particularly with new people, I will say, you need to ask me questions if you want additional information, and then we can go from there. Because the last thing you want to do as a dungeon master is have a great, huge, long monologue. You lose your players. It's much more important. One of the things I learned as a teacher when I was doing my teaching training is we were told and informed that we had to try to teach, and everything we said had to be a question. So we could never do anything other than just ask a question, and then get the player, not the players, but in this case we're dealing with players and DM, but get the student to actually answer that question. And that's quite difficult to do. So what you do when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons is you reverse it. Whatever you say, you need to try to get the players to ask questions. So when I say, what do you want to do? I'm actually asking a question that is trying to elicit another question from them. And, I will often say things like, do you want to find out more information? How are you going to go about doing that? So both are questions, and I'm trying to force them. My statements are around trying to get them to ask a question of me so I can give them more information. And if we can achieve that, there's a good chance they will be able to find the trap, evaluate the trap, and select the appropriate way to disable the trap. I think that's the best way I can answer how much information as a dungeon master you give out. All right, what do you got here, Mike? What do you say? Well, I think that's pretty obvious. If you're using an investigation check rather than a perception check to find a trap, I think probably the most obvious thing to say is you don't find anything. If you're using an investigation to find the trap, often in D&D, it's actually we're using perception. Investigation is the deduction about how things work. Like you find the trap with perception, and if you're following sort of the normal process, we'd use investigation to determine what type of trap it is and how it operates and what's the best way to actually disable it. So you're getting that kind of information out of it, okay? Now, a low roll, if you're using it to find the trap, would just mean, well, you just don't find anything, do you? You don't find anything. No, there's no trap there. If you're using it for investigation, I guess your description as a dungeon master is going to look more like you're not too sure how this trap works, okay? I think that's probably the best way of dealing with that if they roll really low with investigation. Does that answer your question, Mike? Well, and there's the other thing. We do have passive checks. Even if the players roll low and they're suspicious, which of course that's why earlier versions of Dungeons & Dragons, the Dungeon Master rolled the dice and not the players. But if we're going to allow people to roll dice, then we need to make sure you have players that won't metagame. If you have players who are incapable of metagaming, then use passive perception or roll the dice yourself. Okay? That's the whole point. If players are unable to do that, I can assure you there are players out there who can actually roll low on dice and role play that they don't know what's there. And they will take the consequences because we have decided to use dice to determine the outcome in the situation. But yeah, you have a couple of options. Passive perception, roll the dice yourself, or just allow them to roll the dice if you think you can trust your players to not metagame. Yeah. Dinomancer, hi Dinomancer. Dinomancer is a patron and supports these me on YouTube. I do appreciate it. And I've subbed to your bro as well. Okay, cool. He is a very skilled artist. He was telling me that he's currently being trained by some, demon painters? Golden demon painters. Golden demon painters are people who do a lot of Warhammer 40k, Warhammer, and it's like an award. It's a pretty prestigious award for painting miniatures, and so he's been getting a lot of instruction from them. And he uses wet blending, something I've never been able to figure out how to do that myself. Okay, what else have we got here? So Marina's given you some advice there, but yeah, I mean, and 5e the usual sort of way of operating, and this doesn't, even Wizards of the Coast doesn't follow this pattern, is your perception check followed by investigation check. But again, you do what you need to do. Thank you for subscribing to my brother's channel, Marina. I do appreciate it. It's great. Okay, so what else have we got here? So yeah, Marina, if I answered your question and you found something useful out of what I had to say, good. I'm glad. It's funny when you explain to people how they train you as a teacher. And then you actually have to go through the process. This is why I love the fact that YouTube currently allows me to put a poll. I can ask you a question. I can leave it there. I can give some set responses. And if there's no set response here that works for you, you either leave the poll alone and you use the chat, the live chat window, or the comments section if you're rewatching it, and you put your feedback there. And otherwise, if there's something that you can select, then you pick it. So this is me applying my teaching degree to Dungeons and Dragons online with YouTube. Hello, Ruth Razor. How are you doing? Okay. So again, Ruth Razor, I think the best resource is to go to Wally DM. Can I find Wally DM's channel right now? And look, he does traps and puzzles. Okay, that's what he does. He's currently working on another puzzle book. He's already got a puzzle book, but he's also working on a trap book himself. I know Wally, and Wally is a very practical individual, and always tries to put things together in such a way that it makes sense and it's relatively easy to deal with. And so you can be assured that whatever he produces will probably wind up being the top end of the market in terms of quality. And his view of traps is you don't use traps or puzzles unless they are fun. If it's not fun, then why would you do it? He doesn't understand why people would use traps or puzzles just to not be fun. So go check out Wally at some point, and you'll find he does have, like I said, a video that talks about different trap resources. Now, what else? We will also I do a Dungeon Master preparation live stream, as some of you know. And when we go back to doing skill challenges, we'll probably do some environmental stuff, but I will build some traps with you that are skill challenges, because the skill challenge, it's not just dice rolls, people, are probably one of the best ways to actually include and feed somebody a trap in a way that makes it interesting. Okay, not just for you as a dungeon master, but also for the players. Yes, that's exactly right, Dynamancer. The Golden Demon Award is, yeah. Now, my brother doesn't have a Golden Demon Award, but his stuff is very good, and he is currently being trained by some Golden Demon Award painters. And I would love you guys to be able to hang out with him while he paints miniatures, because he can do a lot more of that than I can ever do. So you'd get the best of both worlds. Now, I thought I would just explain what's going to happen with the Lost Mine of Phandelver coming up, not tomorrow, but the day after, for those of you who are here. Oh, you want me to... Sorry, yeah, I can do that. That's fine. I can discuss the Find Trap spell. Please discuss. Oh my God. All right, now, can I just say that the Find Trap spell is awful. But before I do that, since I do occasionally make mistakes about stuff when I'm talking about it, so it's probably best if I make sure I reference the book as I go. So let me just find that page, Find Traps. God. Who would have guessed it was such a bad spell? Mike Hall, look, you're welcome. If I talked you through that and it sort of helped, great. Like, Find Traps. Let me just find this page. Right. So, look, a lot of you will already probably understand some of the problems with a trap. So what I'm going to do, I think probably the best way is for me to read out the section and stop and comment on each section as I go, or each sentence, to point out where there are some things you have to contend with and some problems. There's a reason why nobody uses this spell. I have talked about finding traps before, but that spell, I did actually talk about it but I never have ever considered a viable option. Anyway, let's have a look at the entry here in the book. If I can read it and get it right, that'd be awesome. I may well not. Actually, I feel like even if I do that, it's not going to work. So give me a second. I'll pull up D&D Beyond. I'll read it from there because that'll be the most current version. And my book I bought a few years back, and so they change stuff, don't they? And that can be a complete pain in the butt. And hopefully find traps is one of those things that generally is available to everybody. Find traps. Let's have a look. Let's see the entry. Hopefully it doesn't. Yeah, okay, so there we go. So I can actually look at it. I'm going to zoom it in because my eyes are old. And that'll help a lot with me actually working through this. Okay, so yeah, I've got it. I'm ready. Let's have a look at what we've got here. Find traps. This is the spell you'll find. It's supposed to be on the basic rules for Dungeons and Dragons 5e. It's supposed to be on page 241. It's actually in the player's handbook on page 241 as well. So pretty easy to find. It's a second level spell, and it's an action to cast. It has a range of 120 feet, which is a good range. Like that's not. There's nothing wrong with any of that. And its ability is to detect. So this is what it says. You sense the presence of any trap within range that is within line of sight. Right there. Let's just stop right there. This is the biggest problem. The problem is most traps are hidden. There's something blocking line of sight to them. So if you're dealing with a trap that has darts in the walls, then you probably can't see the darts. What if you have a trap that is a pit trap and the floor falls away? Well, you can see the floor, but you can't really see the trap as such. And so it requires a dungeon master to look at that and say, okay, do I need to see the outside cosmetics that are hiding the trap? Is that sufficient? Or do I need to see the part of the mechanism in some way? And you don't usually have the mechanism of a trap visible. And because line of sight is required, a lot of traps come from above, so you don't necessarily have line of sight, or they come out of the wall, the floor. So if you're dealing with, say, a blade trap, like a spinning blade that comes out of the floor, for example, there would be a groove in the floor. Now you can see that, right? Well, you would assume you can see that. But then the blade comes out, and then you can see the blade once it's cutting into you. Like that. That's sort of like what we're dealing with here, or it appears out of there. So one of the aspects of this particular spell is our dungeon master going to adjudicate that you need to see a certain part of the trap? Can you get away with just looking and seeing the cosmetic covering, or do you need to actually see the trap itself? So it's poorly worded in terms of a spell, and when you say something like that, there's a problem. I think the intention was that if you were blind and you had covered your eyes, you wouldn't see it, or if you weren't looking in the right direction, although we don't have a lot of facing rules in D&D 5e, that you wouldn't be able to spot it coming. But again, finding traps and requiring that you have line of sight to it, it presents a lot of confusion for a dungeon master. You would think that it wouldn't, but it does. Let's go on to the next section. A trap for the purposes of this spell includes anything that will inflict a sudden or unexpected effect. You can consider harmful or undesirable, okay? Which was specifically intended as such by the creator. So in other words, the loss of hit points or any conditions that it might impart are also included with this. Now here's the problem. Like, That's very general. That just opens it up. The dungeon master now has to adjudicate and decide what that means. Because if you read that, let me read that again. Is that a very good sentence? Does that actually make it really clear exactly what we're dealing with? A trap for the purpose of this spell includes anything that will inflict a sudden or unexpected effect you consider harmful or undesirable, which was specifically intended as such by the creator. That just basically says that the dungeon master makes up everything, okay, which is fine, but every dungeon master is going to adjudicate slightly differently because of the wording so general on that spell. Let's move on to the next section. Thus, the spell would sense an area affected by the alarm spell. Right. So this is probably where a lot of you get stuck, is where, like, how do you see a spell effect? A glyph of warding. Here's the problem with a glyph of warding, and I'll come back to that in a second. Or a mechanical pit trap. But it would not reveal a natural weakness in the floor, an unstable ceiling, or a hidden sinkhole. So it's saying you can't detect natural hazards. The problem is a lot of traps are in fact natural hazards. They are set up using the natural hazard around them as a trap in some way. So that takes all of that off the plate for the spell. The spell can't find those anymore. It can't find anything that's a natural hazard, even though natural hazards are often used as a trap of some kind. The glyph of warding. The problem with a glyph of warding is you could place something on top of it. You can set up your glyph of warding, place something on top of the glyph of warding, and you can't actually see the glyph of warding. Okay? The spell would sense an area affected by an alarm spell or the glyph of warding. Now you could say, well, actually, the line of sight thing doesn't apply, the first sentence. But the problem is dungeon masters are going to say, well, if you can't see the glyph of warding because it's under something, this spell doesn't work. The alarm spell in this case doesn't work because, well, it's probably not going to be a problem. The alarm spell is probably not a big issue. But something like a glyph of warding, I can see there being issues with. The last section of this spell, and it says, this spell merely reveals that a trap is present. Like, it says that there's a trap. You don't learn the location of each trap, so you don't even know where the trap is. You just know there's a trap somewhere within 120 feet. Really? If I go into a dungeon, I'm probably going to assume there's going to be traps, right? There's probably going to be traps. Unless, of course, you're dealing with a dungeon master who never uses them. So now I don't know the location. I know there's a trap within 120 feet. I don't know its exact location. But you learn the general nature of the danger posed by the trap you sense. Here again, line of sight, huge range, don't know exact location, don't know what the trap is. But we know what the general purpose danger proposed by the trap is. You sense it. Again, it's a very general statement. Like, it's one of the worst spells I consider in the game, frankly, because it doesn't actually guide the dungeon master to work out how to adjudicate this. So this spell merely reveals the trap is present at 120 feet. You don't learn the location of each trap. And so that means that you know that there are traps. What if there is 100 traps, but you don't know exactly how many there are because you don't learn that information, right? And you don't learn the exact location of each trap. So I feel that the find trap spell is either, if you're going to allow it in your game and let players use it, you need to tell them that you're going to use it in a way that actually makes it worthwhile. It's a second level spell. Like, it should be able to do something effective. Okay? I feel like you probably need to almost reword this whole thing. This line of sight stuff is not helpful. The descriptions that they provide, there's no advice and guidance. So I would go with, you either do it your way and we leave it at that, my feeling is if I'm gonna allow people to use the find trap spell, I go with the most generous interpretation. That would be me. Okay, all right. I answered that question. Let's go back to our Q&A. Look, if my answer was kind of long-winded, I apologize. It's really like, I don't know, what can you say about something when they do these sorts of things? So Dynamancer, did that give you what you wanted out of me? Were there any questions about the find trap spell that I didn't state that you need me to talk about? So as a player, don't take the find trap spell unless you had a good long discussion with your dungeon master about how they're going to adjudicate it, because you'll probably find it's a waste of your time. Which is why I do videos on how to find traps in the first place and deal with them. Okay. Mike, if you found it useful, great. You just noticed the hat? So I've been told I need to upgrade my hat, and that I need to change my hat out. Other people kind of understand that the hat is kind of iconic for me now. There's many reasons why I wear the hat. I did a video on it many years ago, but yeah. Samuel von Brewster. Samuel von Brewster is a patron. You finally made it to a live stream. Well done. How's it going? So I'll answer what the heck is going on with the traps if you like, because there's a little bit more behind it that I never actually ever discussed. But if you really are that interested, you just let me know in the comments. Otherwise, let's just move on. Yeah, the trap the find trap spell is already bugged. It's already messed up. Yeah, and so, but it also too, Dinomancer, the wording sort of suggests to a dungeon master that they can't actually see it. And like, if you can't, most traps are hidden, so you can't actually see them. So how would you be able to figure out that they're there? It's ridiculous wording, you know. I think find traps needs to, and I guess the reason why the designers, let's get real, the designers, somebody's given me a super chat. I'm going to come back to your what you were saying here, Dinomancer, but somebody's given me a super chat, so I better. Agile Monk. Hello, Agile Monk. Agile Monk is a patron, and he's been supporting me a lot with regard to all of my live streams and advice, and we do talk on Discord. A lot of people talk to me on Discord over voice and video chat. What do you got here? Yeah, so Agile Monk is talking about whether you're a player or a GM or game master or a dungeon master, that the 10-foot pole is probably one of the most useful tools out there. And he's played for 48 years. I've played for a lot less. I think for me, it's just over 20 years. I'm 51. Yeah, it'd be just over 20 years, something like that. But also too, something like, and I've said this before, like if you're trying to find traps or even trigger a trap, I didn't think I mentioned this, but you can tie your rope to a grappling hook, and then you hurl the grappling hook over where the tripwire is, so you can pull on it to activate it. And of course you're a long way away because it's tied to a rope, so you don't wind up in the path, the danger zone, and the gauntlet of death. Or you can potentially drop it over a pressure plate. Now, if the pressure plate's triggered for light movement, then it will go off. But I mean, I've talked about different ways, but by all means, absolutely, I feel like one of the best ways to deal with things is definitely the 10-foot pole. Unseen Servant, as Spirit Wolf has just mentioned. This is why I talked about Unseen Servant. Unseen Servant it's a ritual for a wizard. and I believe it is. Is it a ritual? I'm pretty sure it is. You'll let me know if I've got that wrong. So it means that you can set that up. You can just cast that as a ritual. It might take you a little bit of time, and then you can use that to just walk through and activate everything, because it's probably going to be applying more pressure to those pressure plates, and the tripwires will be activated, and so you can see your unseen servant taking all of the horrible penalties. Mike Hall makes a very good point. I'm still going to thank Agile Monk for the $5 super chat. Now let me go back to the question that somebody proposed here. I think it was, now where was it? Oh, there was a line of thought that was going on here, and I think it was Dinomancer. Did I lose my train of thought? Or maybe I have. Yeah, if you treat the find trap spell more like sonic radar or something like that, that can penetrate stone and so forth, it would make more sense. That's what I was going to say. One of the reasons I think that Wizards of the Coast has designed and written the find trap spell the way they have is they were concerned that with dungeon masters who had dungeons or locations that were full of traps, that what you could wind up doing is casting this trap, the spell once, and then you would know and just turn it on, use it like radar, and learn the location of every trap in 120 feet, its location, how it works, and circumvent all that stuff the dungeon master had set up. And they knew that if they worded the find trap spell that way, that no dungeon master would allow it at their table and they would ban it. Or, worse, a dungeon master would simply consider traps no longer worthwhile putting into the game of D&D 5e because that spell existed, if it worked that way. And that's probably why that spell doesn't work that way. So now, if that's what we're worried about, then we need to figure out a better way of making the trap spell, the find trap spell, efficient and useful, rather than it being a solution to cover a huge area. I mean, it could be as simple as saying you find the location of one trap, the closest one to you, which would make sense. That's the one you would probably want to know about, and how it works. And you do not need to have line of sight. That means that if you have multiple traps in a dungeon, you would have to cast the spell more than once, because it's instantaneous, the spell, right? It doesn't have a period of time. It just works once. So if you were able to pick up just one spell, then find traps would be like a good way of solving that. I think the other aspect of this is the designers probably decided that they didn't want to eliminate some of the older techniques for finding traps that are kind of lost on the newer generation who don't use them at all. Like, I've come across many people who just laugh at me when I talk about the 10-foot pole, or tying a grappling hook to a rope and using that as a sort of for activating. Or I talk about other ways of dealing with traps, and they're like, huh? Like that was in the old days. I'm like, oh God, here we go again. This is why I talk about a lot of stuff that's come from the past and try to bring it forward. Not necessarily that popular, but like it needs to be done. Otherwise, it's going to get lost in the ether. Okay. The older generation won't be here forever. Okay, so I've answered. That's what I wanted to say. That's what's probably happened with Wizards of the Coast. They didn't want the find trap spell to be a catch-all. You find everything in a dungeon. Yeah, potentially that could be roof raiser. Yeah. So here's the problem. So you're talking about using detect magic to find traps. Is in most cases is safer and cheaper and more reliable as an option. The problem with the detect magic spell when you're looking for traps is detect magic runs into a similar problem. I'll explain. Can I find the spell and just sort of go over why that is? Let me just have a look if I can find that on D&D Beyond. So we'll use the newest rendition rather than my book. My player's handbook might not be the best one. So detect magic. Let's just have a look and see what D&D Beyond's got here. So let me address some of the problems with detect magic. It's a first level spell. You can cast it as a ritual. It lasts 10 minutes, which is all great. Like, that's awesome. Its primary purpose is actually just to find magical auras that are given off. The problem is with a magical aura is there's nothing that indicates in the rules how far a magic aura goes. And one of the things that detect magic stipulates that a lot of people forget is the following, and I'll read it out so you can hear me. For the duration, you sense the presence of magic within 30 feet of you. Okay, so that's the first thing. So we know within 30 feet, we sense the presence of magic from your current location. If you sense magic in this way, you can use your action to see a faint aura around a visible creature or object in the area that bears the magic, and you learn its school of magic, if any. And this is where the problem lies, in that one part of that sentence with detect magic. You can use your action to see a faint aura around a visible creature, okay? But it's a trap, so we're dealing with objects now. That means any visible object or creature. But what if the magical aura coming off the object is unseen because you can't actually see the object? What if the object is behind something? This is the problem. This is what I say, is a lot of traps have their, whatever it is, hidden behind something else that has nothing to do with the trap. And therefore, you would not be able to see that visible object to know what that faint aura is. And one of the best examples that I can think of is when you have something like say you have like a flagstone on the floor, and somebody puts a glyph of warding on that flagstone. But the dungeon master has set it up in their adventure by placing a clay pot or a stone pot or a bucket or something on top of it, or a treasure chest on top of the flagstone, so that you can't even see the flagstone that the glyph of warding is on. That means that the actual chest itself is not the trap, and it's not magical, right? So you're not going to pick up anything. You can't see the flagstone because it's covered by the treasure chest. So therefore, using detect magic to find that glyph of warding when there's something on top of it doesn't work. Now, here we go. Here's another aspect to this that's problematic. The spell can penetrate most barriers, but is blocked by 1 foot of stone. Okay. So it can penetrate barriers, but it can't go through more than one foot of stone. It can't go through more than 1 inch of common metal. Are you starting to realize that, hang on, what if I have a treasure chest and it's quite thick? Okay. What if the sodding thing is lined with lead? A thin sheet of lead. So it can be blocked by a thin sheet of lead, right? Or 3 feet of wood or dirt. Are we starting to realize the problems of trying to use detect magic? I've always encountered this in the past when I was playing the game. Trying to use detect magic to find traps is just, sometimes it just does not work. We always did it, but we were always aware that it wouldn't necessarily find a magical trap, particularly if there was something over the top of it and was waiting for us to actually lift something up or move something, and then it would be activated. You know what I mean? And that's the biggest problem with using detect magic. Okay, so I think I've answered the detect magic for Dynamancer. Arcane trickster bait. Yeah, well, I suppose you could say that. Is it arcane trickster bait? Maybe, maybe. Marina, you like my answer? I don't know which answer I gave. If it was a good answer, good. If it worked for you, great. Awesome. What do you got here, Samuel? No, Sam. I'll answer your question. So first of all, I don't like to include traps unless there is a good rationale behind it. Like, does it make sense to put the trap there? I never put traps on a lock, almost never, because it's expected to be there, and so that's where you would look first. I never put them on a door because it encourages people to try the door macro. What's going on? I feel like there's a little creature running around inside here. Have I got mice in my house? I probably do. There's 3 cats in the house. If there's mice here, I'll be unimpressed. So here's my thoughts. This is just how I do it. I set a very high DC for finding a trap. I set a very high DC because I expect traps to be hard to find. I set a very high DC for disabling a trap and learning how to use it's a bit different. It's very moderate for me. Okay. But manipulating your environment is one of the best ways, and as far as I'm concerned, for allowing players to activate and spot traps. In terms of whether it's railroady, because my traps don't kill you outright, they do it usually slowly. There's time to escape them usually, yeah, or there's time to do something. And I use the as a character level damage severity table a lot. So I use a setback damage, or I apply conditions, and I want the trap to be activated. There still needs to be a chance for players to find them, but often the best way to find the traps that I put in my game is by using something other than their eyes, their ears, and their nose. Like using a dice roll is probably not the best way to find a trap in my game. And that is to encourage them to actually explore and manipulate the environment. Okay, if they're doing that, I think that should be rewarded. And it probably makes much more sense that you'd actually find the trap, because there's a lot of things that your senses can't pick up. Yeah. And then once the trap is activated, if they do actually activate the trap, then it's going to wind up slowly doing more and more and more and more, becoming more and more deadly. Which is why when I actually apply a trap, it's usually ongoing. One of the traps I used that I thought was very effective was actually from Pathfinder, and I modified it, and it was a swinging blade. There were 6 swinging blades in this room. And the trap was not activated till you got to the other side of the room, where the monsters were hiding on the other side behind some statues. And you could notice the monsters, but you had to get quite close, and they would then pull this lever and activate the trap. The door behind them would close but not lock. But the players don't know it hasn't locked. So it just takes a player to decide to go to that door to leave this environment. But they're a swinging blade. So moving forward was dangerous. Okay? There were lots of problems with it, and but you wouldn't be outright killed by a swinging blade. It would just sort of like nick you, or cause you to have to move very fast and fatigue you in some way, right? So you're losing hit points because of fatigue, stress, losing your luck, your lucky heroic powers, or whatever you want to call it. Hit points is measured by lots of different things, right? Not just sheer injury. Like when you take a fatal injury or a serious injury when you hit 0 hit points. And so that meant that the players had to fight off monsters, deal with the swinging trap. They could go forward, they could go back, they could stay still. That gave them lots of options. That meant that trap kept going. The blade kept swinging back and forth. There was a way to stop the trap, but it's on the other side of the room. And that's where the monsters are. And so I tend to design my traps around an entire room, and the trap itself is the room. Trap rooms are much more efficient and effective as a challenge for players, I find. And you don't have to include monsters in your traps anyway. Just an approach. And I promise I will do more skill challenges that are traps that you can utilize and then upload them to Patreon. All the notes for today will go up onto Patreon. Okay. So Dynamancer, do you agree thieves' tools are used to disarm traps? Well, it depends on the trap. Not all traps would be able to be disarmed by thieves' tools. I think some traps wouldn't require any tools whatsoever. I just mentioned that the hunting trap is actually designed to be disarmed or opened up and so forth without using any tool whatsoever. It's just the method of doing so. You just need to know it's there so you can apply the right technique to reset it or disable it. Yep. I will keep the hat. Don't you worry. The hat's not going anywhere. Right, so let's go down. Hello, Chris. Chris, you need to stick your YouTube channel link into the chat. And I will approve it. Just put it in, and I will go click yes. Okay. Chris runs a YouTube channel himself. Right, so, Spirit Wolf is here. Yeah, no, I said hi to Spirit Wolf. I'm losing my mind. Okay. Put armor on it. Yeah, you could put armor on it. You just need to cover a trap with something, and then it's like, how do you detect it? Like that's the problem. The whole idea of using the 10-foot pole and your grappling hook and rope is to try to trigger traps as you go. It's like trying to move through a minefield. You know, it's all very well having a metal detector for detecting where the mines are, but sometimes you just have to activate them, and you do that from a distance if you can. .005. Welcome, .005. Does .005, do you know 007 or 002? I'm hoping that one day we'll actually get the story of 002. And my understanding is that 002 was a black man. A character I would like to see more in movies, frankly. we don't have to have James Bond forever. 007 James Bond, we could have 002 show up. It's time to move on to the stories of all the other 00s. Agile Monk says he's 003. I didn't realize you were 003. None of you are going to understand just how true Monk's 003 is. I believe you, Agile Monk, that you are 003. I very much do believe that. Our little joke. Here we go. So, where is the Thieves' Tools proficiency shown on the D&D sheet, please? I can't find it. The D&D sheet? You have to explain 005 what you mean. Thieves' Tool proficiency there's not a specific section. You'll find Thieves' Tool proficiency, if you have it, would be under your proficiencies on your character sheet. If you're talking about your character sheet, that's where you would normally find it. What can I do to indicate what I'm talking about? Is there an easy way of doing this? I'm assuming 005, that's what you mean. Okay, if that's what you mean, great. If it isn't, you'll explain a bit better. D&D Beyond, 007. Okay, 005. Okay, so 005. Samuel, I have not ignored your comments. I will get back to you, but let's find what he's talking about here. Because I think I understand where his issues lie with this. And so let's see if we can't rectify that little problem for him. So I'll pull up a character sheet that I've already made and show you where you would normally find your tools. I don't think I made a rogue at all. Did I make a rogue? It doesn't matter. It would be under the same sort of, it'll be in the same sort of place. So let's go here. Character builder. Let's just go to character builder. Look, maybe what I will do is I will pull up, let me just pull up this character now so I can show you. So let me just go to a different screen so I can show you where it would show up. Okay? How's that sound? And that'll probably help. So let me just find, where is it? Screen capture. Display capture. Okay. You'll let me know if my face is in the way. If my face is in the way, I won't know unless you tell me, people. I'll just make it smaller. I'll make it really, really small so it's easy to find. Okay, that's updated it. Let's move across to the screen we need, which is here, this character here. This is an artificer. It's already built as far as I remember. And I will give it a tool proficiency. We'll give it sleight of hand. Let's do that. Trinkets and simple weapons. Yeah, so tools. Thieves tools. Does it actually? I don't know if it actually gives you proficiency in thieves tools. Tool proficiency. There we go. We'll just pick. I'll pick thieves tools. Actually, I think they might already have it, don't they? Don't artificers already have thieves tools? They might already have the thing, as far as I remember. Okay. All right. So let's just zap on across here real quickly. I haven't really done very much with this character at all, so let's just not worry too much about all that. And we'll just go to end and view character. Oh, is it gonna force me to do everything? I don't have time. I don't have time to do all that sort of nonsense. Let's go back to where can I just do it quickly? Wizards, bards, wizards, fathomless. I'm not going to be able to show you. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to show you exactly where you need to look. Let's see if I can do this here. Okay, so first off, probably the first thing you want to be looking for when you're dealing with your thieves tools, okay, is you want to be looking at your dexterity modifier. So your dex modifier, okay, is over here, right? There's dexterity on the screen, and that's +1. So your dungeon master is probably going to ask for that, okay, +1, and you're going to add that to your proficiency bonus. Now, your proficiency bonus on your character sheet for D&D Beyond is in the middle here. It says proficiency bonus, and this is a +2, right there, okay, in the middle. Can you see that? And you would normally add your proficiency bonus if you're proficient with your thieves tools to this 2. This is a level 1 character, and your dexterity modifier, in this case, it's a +1. So that comes to 3. Roll a 20-sided dice, and then you get whatever you get at the end. That's your check. Okay, that's what you got. And they compare it with a DC. Now, with regard to something like your equipment, if I can find inventory. Inventory is listed under, this is where all your gear is. Like, this is all the stuff that you have. This should list if you have thieves tools. So if you're trying to put thieves tools onto your character sheet, that's where it would normally be. So we can add equipment, and I will type in here thieves tools. There it is. I'm going to add that. It's now added. Okay, it should now appear down the bottom here. There it is, right there. Okay, And that there is now. You don't need to. That's basically if that's what you were looking for and wanted from me. That's really the gist of it. There isn't usually a section, if I remember right, that states any kind of what do you call it? Proficiency. Proficiency bonuses are usually just listed further down. Like where are they? Features and traits. It's the warlock ones. No, it's not there. Description, inventory, spells, racial feat, da da da. No, that's facial. That's class features. All. It should give us all of them. Okay. All right. This is one of the problems with these online things. Here we go. Tools. Dice set. Armor proficiency there. There we go. In the corner there on. So this is on all under features and traits. And we can. It doesn't matter whether what you're on, as long as you got on all. It's the first sheet down the bottom there. It'll give you all of your proficiencies. So anything you're proficient with. In this case, I'm not proficient with thieves tools, but this is where it would appear down here. Okay, weapons, armor, languages. This is where thieves tools should appear. There we go. I think I've answered that question. If I haven't, you'll let me know. Okay, and I will endeavour in the future to come up with a better way of finding it for you. I just don't have a rogue. It would be easy. I'm sure it would be much easier to show you all of that if I had the rogue, but I don't have it with me. Sorry. Yeah. And as Dinomancer mentions, you'll find that something like the thieves tools, they're not listed as a skill on the sheet. Okay. Sleight of hand, sometimes people use sleight of hand, yes. Yeah. Okay, so let me just go back to Samuel. What do you got here? Yeah, so yeah, throwing javelins or spears would also be pretty effective at finding a trap. A walking stick would be pretty effective, but you're kind of close, so it's not such a great idea. What you can do is you could use mage hand to hold a 10-foot pole, because it won't be that heavy, and use it to do the prodding. So you can keep your 10-foot pole 30 feet from you. Yeah? It's now just down to whether the Dungeon Master feels like you have that kind of control, which I don't think is kind of unreasonable to expect. I think you should be able to do something like that. Now, I think that's okay. So did I give you what you needed to know? I multi-classed 8 fighter, 1 barbarian, 1 rogue. Oh my god. I don't know what my proficiency is. Okay, thanks. As I said, you'll find it in the middle of the character sheet at the top. That's your proficiency bonus. And you add your dexterity modifier, and you're all good, okay? But look, when I do character building for rogues, then we can we'll cover a lot of that sort of stuff anyway. All right, I think this is probably a good place to stop for today. One, because my sinuses are a mess and I need to be organised. I'm supposed to be in a Dungeon Master round table today, and I need to get myself organised for that. So we will, of course, I will be back. I will be back in 2 days doing the Lost Mine of Phandelver. I can assure you I still cannot do battle mats and battle grids yet, because my office is still a mess. I'm still waiting for the real camera, the 6K camera, to be mounted. I'm still waiting for lights to show up, and my desk is just not usable. But I will be back. So for those of you who are, and in 2 days, we're going to start all over again, Lost Mine of Phandelver, and we will proceed with a lot of the other programs that you saw during the week. DM prep, I'll be doing some more character creation for beginners, and that is for the sorcerer, I believe, and I'll be doing some more basic rules. So there's plenty coming, and yeah, you might have to put up with a few edited videos as well, if I find the time. Okay, so I just want to thank all of my patrons for supporting me, so I can do this sort of thing. It really does help. Being a patron makes a big difference. I want to thank Agile Monk for the super chat, the $5 super chat. I want to thank everybody for watching my videos and my live streams, particularly the live streams, because I know YouTube doesn't necessarily promote them very much. And it's not common for people to watch a lot of live stream content because it's very long. I get it. But I do want to thank you for watching and supporting me in that way. And I just want to say, wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, okay, or the wee early morning, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Thank you, Monk. Thank you, everybody. There we go.